So you're the guy who built this whole mess, right? Great. Then you can show it to our new head of ops. He's coming straight from Tesla. My name is Silas Burke. I'm 46 years old. For the past 14 years, I've been the lead systems engineer at Dryden Logistics, a freight optimization company headquartered just outside Minneapolis. If your car, phone, or frozen pizza moved through the Midwest in the last decade, odds are the routing software I designed had a hand in getting it there. I built the engine, a real-time logistics matrix capable of recalculating truck routes and cargo priorities across 19 states, all while shaving millions off operational costs. But that Tuesday morning, sitting in the second-floor conference room across from Will Terman, our shiny new COO in a slim-cut navy suit, I could already see where this was going. He nodded toward a tall, lean guy standing behind him, early 30s, zero body fat, Patagonia vest over a white Oxford. This is Kieran. Just wrapped a 5-year run optimizing fleet logistics at Tesla. Brings a lot of West Coast energy. Kieran smiled like he was already bored. I think he was scrolling through Slack on his Apple Vision Pro. Excited to modernize things around here, he said. Heard your system's a bit legacy. Legacy. That word hit harder than it should have. I didn't flinch. Just smiled and said, every great system starts as a legacy. The trick is making sure it earns the title. Terman chuckled, clearly not getting it. Kieran didn't laugh at all. I folded my hands, leaned back, and listened as they outlined their vision. New tools. New tech. New leadership. And me. Apparently, I was the continuity asset, someone to smooth the transition. I'd been here since Dryden ran out of a warehouse with bad Wi-Fi and a second-hand Keurig. But now they were handing the keys to a guy who thought freight optimization was just a data layer. And that's when I knew. They weren't here to work with me. They were here to work past me. It started small. The first week after the introduction, I noticed my access to the fleet analytics dashboard had been downgraded. Nothing major, just missing a couple real-time monitoring tools I'd personally written in Python 3 years ago during a snowstorm that shut down half the Midwest. I submitted a ticket through internal IT. No response. By Thursday, I saw Kieran sitting in the war room, poring over my system architecture diagrams with 2 junior engineers who'd never touched production code. One of them asked what a geofence was. Think of it like an invisible border, I heard Kieran say. Only we can probably get rid of those. Too much friction. That night, I pulled up the server logs out of habit. Kieran's new credentials had full root access. His name had been added to our internal admin shell, the one we reserved for emergency failovers. The only other names on that list were mine and our original CTO, Vera Clemens, who'd retired in 2019. I emailed Terman. Hey Will, just wanted to confirm. Is Kieran cleared for sysadmin level access already? That's usually post-onboarding. He replied 2 hours later, from his iPhone. Kieran's scope is fluid. Let's all stay flexible. Fluid. That's what they call it when they're reassigning your work without officially telling you. That weekend, I came in early, Saturday morning, no one around. The coffee machine still half cleaned from Friday night. I walked past the empty desks and into my server room, swiped my keycard, typed my credentials. Still had access. For now. But something had shifted. You feel it in your gut before it hits your inbox. I stood there, listening to the faint hum of the cooling fans, and thought, they're not replacing the system. They're replacing the one person who knows how to keep it alive. 2 weeks later, I was asked to attend a process clarity meeting. Not a review. Not an audit. A meeting to clarify how I'd been doing my job for the last decade and a half. The invite came from Marissa Yates, our new director of strategic ops, a recent MBA grad from Duke who spoke almost exclusively in phrases like leverage throughput and integrated synergies. She smiled a lot, like she was trying to reassure me this was all normal. We're just trying to standardize legacy workflows, Silas. Build documentation. Remove single points of failure. There it was again. Single point of failure. That's what I'd become. I opened my documentation archive, 400 plus pages of meticulously commented code, diagrams, runbooks, incident logs dating back to 2010. It was more than enough. But that wasn't the point. They didn't want clarity. They wanted extraction. Kieran had been asking the team to replicate key parts of the routing engine, and failing. He'd flagged features like dynamic rerouting as inefficient, even though they'd saved Dryden over $30 million in fuel costs last fiscal year. Then came the protocol conversation. I was pulled into another meeting, this time with Kieran and Jake Alvarez, our HR director. Kieran leaned back in his chair like this was casual. Hey, so quick thing, moving forward, we're going to need approval before you make any system changes. Even minor ones. I blinked. You mean, like updating driver load balancing parameters? Yeah. Exactly. We just want more eyes on changes. You know, transparency. Transparency. I'd built the FleetBrain engine from scratch. I'd kept it running through 3 national logistics meltdowns, 2 cyber attacks, and a fire at our Denver server farm. And now I needed permission to patch my own code. But I smiled, nodded, said what professionals say. Understood. Then I went back to my desk and started saving encrypted copies of everything. Not because I was planning anything. Not yet. But because you don't survive in ops for 14 years without developing a little bit of paranoia. I also started checking Kieran's commit history. He'd pushed 4 updates to our testing environment. 3 of them broke basic routing logic. One introduced a loop that would have crashed every truck on I-90 during peak hours. I rolled them back silently. No one noticed. That's when I realized something that should have scared me more than it did. They thought they could replace me. But they didn't even understand what I did. And worse, they didn't care to learn. It was a Tuesday night. 11:43 p.m. I was at my desk, alone in the Minneapolis office. The rest of the building dark, save for the glowing exit signs and the dull hum of the server stacks down the hall. I was finishing a log sync when I noticed something in the deployment pipeline logs. A request tagged, ZetaOps Audit, do not modify. I hadn't created it. It wasn't tied to anyone on my team. And it had admin-level access. I traced the credentials. They belonged to Jason Lawton, a contractor from an external firm, Ravian Systems, based out of Austin. I'd never heard the name, but I recognized the pattern. They weren't auditing. They were reverse engineering. I kept digging. Over the next 3 hours, I unearthed a hidden folder in our internal SharePoint. /strategic_reorg_Q3/private/. Inside was a slide deck titled, FleetBrain Modernization, Phase Strategy Version 2.1. It was 56 pages. Page 12 hit like a hammer. Phase 3. Personnel Optimization. Transition Legacy Engineering Staff to Consulting Support. Onboard Next-Gen Leadership to align with long-term cost strategy. Page 27. Projected cost savings via staff restructuring, $164,000 per year. My salary. That was the number. That's all I was worth to them. 14 years of innovation, fail-safe design, crisis mitigation. Reduced to a line item in a spreadsheet someone color-coded in pastel green. But they'd made a mistake. They'd documented everything I'd built. Everything, except what I hadn't. In the early days, back when Dryden was still 5 guys and 2 servers in a converted tire shop, I designed something extra. A system within the system. A redundant protection layer, deeply embedded. Invisible to audits. Immune to version updates. Not malicious. Not dangerous. Just defensive. If anyone attempted to override core protocol chains without biometric authorization from a whitelist admin, namely me, the system would enter total lockdown mode. All operations would freeze. Databases would encrypt. Backups would self-invalidate. Unless the proper unlock key was used, a key stored only in one place. A device never connected to Dryden's network. My device. I hadn't activated it. Not yet. Because I still believed, somewhere, that maybe, just maybe, they'd come to their senses. But after that night, after reading those slides, that belief was gone. They didn't want to improve the system, I realized. They just wanted it cheaper. And they thought I'd go quietly. That Wednesday morning, I showed up to work in a grey wool jacket and the watch my wife gave me the year I got the job at Dryden. I stopped by the Fleet Ops floor, nodded to a few familiar faces, and sat at my desk like it was any other day. But I wasn't here to work. I was here to leave. Not with a scene. Not with a speech. Just with everything they didn't understand about what I'd built. I took a final backup. My backup, air-gapped, encrypted, and disconnected from the network. I wiped my personal credentials. Removed my saved passwords. Formatted my local development environment, just to be sure. Then I did something most engineers never do. I ran a full systems diagnostic, line by line, every core dependency, every transaction gateway. Not to fix anything. Just to say goodbye. I walked to the server room, placed my hand on the biometric scanner one last time. The screen blinked. Admin access confirmed. Silas Burke. Level 0 authority. All systems nominal. Then I activated the exit script, not the kill switch, not yet, just the authentication chain validator. A quiet watcher. If anyone without a valid biometric signature tried to modify core systems, the engine would lock itself. Not crash. Not destroy. Just freeze. Permanently. They'd be locked out of their own kingdom. Not because I wanted revenge. But because some systems shouldn't be inherited by people who think GPS routing is just Google Maps for trucks. At 2 p.m., I was called to the transition celebration in the break room. There were cupcakes. And a card. Kieran gave a speech about modernization. Terman thanked me for my dedication. Marissa said they were excited for the next chapter. I smiled. Said thank you. Even clapped at the right times. At 3:15, I was called into HR. The severance agreement was already printed. 4 weeks' pay. Non-compete clause. Standard NDA. I signed. At 3:48, I cleared my desk. 3 notebooks. 1 mug. A photo of my daughter in a cardboard frame she made in 3rd grade. I waved to the office. No one looked up. At 4 p.m., I walked out of Dryden Logistics for the last time. At 4:01, Kieran logged into the core management console. At 4:02, he attempted to push a patch directly into the FleetBrain routing engine. A patch that bypassed a dependency chain I'd created back in 2012, when diesel prices were spiking and we needed second-by-second reroutes across 8 states. At 4:03, the system went dark. FleetBrain froze. Gateways failed. Regional optimization queues halted mid-transmission. The validators had triggered. And the message displayed on Kieran's screen wasn't an error code. It was 1 line of text. Unauthorized modification attempt detected. System integrity compromised. Access denied. At 4:15 p.m., my phone buzzed. Caller ID, Jake Alvarez, HR. Ignored. 4:17. Another call. Terman. Ignored again. By 4:22, I had 8 missed calls and 5 voicemails. All variations of the same message. Hey Silas, slight hiccup. Can you hop back on real quick? I sat on my back porch, watching a freight train roll past the horizon line. A slow, thundering thing. By 5 p.m., I got a text from a former dev. WTF is going on? FleetBrain is frozen. Entire West Region ops are offline. I opened my laptop, the personal one, the one never connected to Dryden. Pulled up a public freight dashboard. The red zones were blooming like blood splatter across the map. Ohio, Indiana, Illinois. Nothing moving. The trucks couldn't reroute. The cargo sat idle. And clients? They noticed. At 5:30, my inbox was a war zone. Urgent. Client escalations. Can you assist? Silas. Just for a second, can we talk? We're trying to fix this, but nothing's responding. Please. I'm sorry. That one was from Terman. He wasn't sorry. He was scared. And he should be. Because they hadn't just lost a system. They'd lost the person who understood why it worked in the first place. FleetBrain wasn't a product. It was an ecosystem. Built with trust, context, and 1,000 small decisions you don't find in documentation. At 6:05, I received one final email. Subject line, consulting opportunity, immediate. They offered me $250 per hour to come back in, temporarily, and help recover core functions. I didn't respond. Because by then, I'd already signed a relocation contract, Zurich. A new firm. Double the pay. Ownership stake. And best of all, they'd found me. Not the other way around. I powered down the laptop. Stepped back inside. Dinner was on the table. My daughter was telling a story about school. My wife smiled when I sat down. And in that moment, I realized something. Some things are built to scale. Others are built to last. But the ones that truly matter are the ones no one else can steal. By Monday morning, Dryden Logistics was the top story on every industry blog and trade bulletin. Catastrophic routing failure freezes Midwest freight network. Dryden Systems collapse spurs federal logistics probe. Internal sabotage suspected as key engineer departs. The headlines didn't name me. But they didn't have to. The people who mattered, they knew. Within 48 hours, Dryden's client roster had dropped by half. By Friday, federal regulators were in the office, asking about disaster recovery protocols. Kieran, gone. Resigned, to pursue other opportunities. His LinkedIn post didn't allow comments. Terman was reassigned internally, unofficial speak for, exiled without title. And Marissa? Well, her strategic clarity didn't hold up too well under subpoenas. I watched it all from a time zone 6 hours ahead, drinking dark coffee at a corner cafe in Zurich, where the air smelled like rain and restraint. I was already in onboarding meetings at Clausen Stratcom, an infrastructure intelligence firm handling pan-European freight optimization. They didn't ask me to simplify what I knew. They asked if I could build them something uncrashable. I told them I'd try. 3 weeks later, I got an email from Vera Clemens, our old CTO, the one who'd left Dryden years ago to sail the Great Lakes. Subject line. So. That happened. The body was just one sentence. They forgot who the system was built for. I don't tell this story for revenge. I didn't destroy anything. They did. With arrogance and ignorance, and the belief that systems run themselves. But systems are relationships. Dependencies. Tiny agreements embedded in logic that only make sense if you respect them. And when you remove the architect, disregard the blueprint, and replace experience with bravado, well, eventually the architecture notices. And it doesn't forget.